Welcome, folks. This is Steve Adubato, and this is Steve Adubato's Leadership Hour. Trust me, I won't just keep saying my name. We are on AM 970. It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. You also, if you happen to miss the Leadership Hour on AM 970, you can check out their website. You could also check out the podcast that's coming out. I am here with my colleague, Mary Gamba, who is the head of business operations at our company, Stand and Deliver. How you doing, Mary?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. We've had a series of wonderful, compelling leadership hours, and this will be no different. Today we'll be talking about a whole range of important leadership issues. If you're listening for the first time, the Leadership Hour is all about how to be a great leader, how to overcome challenges as a leader, tips and tools from those who are, in fact, in leadership positions. And by the way, you don't have to have the title CEO to be a leader. People who choose to lead, who want to lead, can step up and lead and make a difference. And the gentleman I'm about to introduce you to right now is someone who does it every day. He is, in fact, our great friend, Jim Blazar, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Hackensack Meridian Health, which, by the way, Jim, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Steve.
Great to have you. By the way, for those who do not know what Hackensack Meridian Health is, could you please describe it?
Sure. Hackensack Meridian Health is a health network throughout New Jersey. We're 16 hospitals, 6,500 physicians, 450 locations to serve the community, and about 3,500 team members.
How would you describe your role as a leader in this particular position, Chief Strategy Officer? Because we've worked together before, Jim, I know that doesn't really do justice to what you actually do. Go ahead.
Yeah, formally, I'm responsible for helping to develop the strategy and business development for Hackensack Meridian Health. In addition, I'm responsible for marketing and communications, both internal and external. But more importantly, I think I'm a part of the senior leadership team here at Hackensack Meridian Health. And so I have the opportunity to sit in with the other leaders and think through what we're going to do here in New Jersey, and both day-to-day as well as for the future.
Let's get into this whole leadership question. I'm fascinated because you're an expert in communication, marketing, and also you lead a team and you also give advice to top-level executives. By the way, let folks know, before you came to this organization, you were you were a leader at another organization out in the Cleveland area. What was that called?
I was Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at the Cleveland Clinic.
Oh, there.
And yep. And also after that, I was Chief Strategy Officer at Hartford Healthcare up in Connecticut.
So, Jim, here's what I'm curious about, and I've seen you do this. When you have to give, quote, advice, feedback, some might call it criticism, hard to hear stuff, to someone in another leader position, more specifically a CEO, how challenging is it?
No, I think it's very challenging, and it's a test of their leadership to be able to listen. And one of the things that I think I'm pretty good at is being able to lay out issues in a way that is compelling for a leader to listen. And a good leader will not just listen to advice, but dialogue with you so that they can get better. Good leaders are willing to take positive feedback as well as take feedback about areas of opportunity for improvement.
The connection between being a really strong leader and being a, quote, strategic thinker. In your office, when I was in your office one day, you have this huge poster. It's not even a poster. I don't know what it is, but you're laughing. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, yeah.
Describe it for folks, and what does it have to do with leadership?
There's a poster in my office that lays out the strategy for Hackensack Meridian Health, and it talks about us being a people-centered organization. It talks about our values, and then it talks about our key strategies, which, by the way, we publicize. We tell everyone what we're doing and where we're going, because we believe it's in the execution of the strategies that really makes the difference. And a lot of places have good strategies, but it really works when you can execute on those. But we share those so as a communications tool, both for our CEO and for all the leaders and all our team members here, so that everyone knows what we're doing, where we're going, and we're all aligned on that direction.
By the way, this is the Leadership Hour. This is Steve Adubato. I'm here with my colleague, Mary Gamba. Mary, it's interesting. You haven't seen this in Jim's office.
I have not.
I often call it the connecting the dots diagram, or it's not even a cartoon. It's a graphic. When I say connecting the dots, you and I have had this conversation, Jim. Leadership, great leaders need to, quote, connect the dots. What does that mean?
If you're on the front line, you can feel like every day is a new idea or another directive from leadership. And our job as leaders is to connect where you started to where you're going to go and how all those pieces fit together. Part of a job of a leader, I'd say, is 50% of what we do should be coaching and mentoring. And part of that coaching and mentoring is really explaining and aligning what we're doing, where we're going relative to connecting these dots, so that the people that are helping to do the execution, which I just talked about how important execution is, they really see the journey, the pathway to what they need to accomplish. Otherwise, I think it feels like random acts and random tasks that they need to do, versus we're here about creating a great experience, outcomes, and affordability for all the patients that use our facilities. Unless you're connecting all those things together, each day just feels like another set of directives. And that's not what we want. We want everyone engaged and understanding how everything relates to each other.
We were joking about this before we get on the line. We did a whole segment on why so many meetings we have seem like a massive waste of time. They're not strategic. You keep using that word. They're just, I'm like, why are we in this meeting? I've been in some conversations with you about this subject. Jim, how do you, as a leader, what's your philosophy of leading and running a meeting?
Yeah, first of all, I think there should be a set standard type of agenda that always starts with recognition, starts with the goals for the meeting, what we're trying to accomplish, and then is very efficient about going through that. And you end with what are the takeaways, what are our next steps, so there's real clarity about what do we accomplish in the meeting and what do we have to do between now and the next meeting, or between now and when we're going to execute, so that everyone has real clarity and direction about what the next steps are.
Real quick, Jim, we have a couple minutes left. What do you do when someone doesn't get the deadline, doesn't hit the deadline, misses the deadline, makes the deadline, and delivers a product that isn't what it's supposed to be? Describe your style as a leader in dealing with performance-related issues.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is I think it's the role of a leader to try to set everyone that works for you up for success. So having some checkpoints before something's due so you can make sure things are on track. Something that I try to do is have my team member or who I'm working with report back to me what they believe the task is, so we make sure that we're both saying exactly the same thing.
Don't assume.
Exactly. I would not assume. And it's not being critical. It's just making sure that I could say something, I think it means one thing, you can interpret it another way. The clearer you are about what the task, the better the result every single time. And being very clear about, if you give someone an assignment in the morning and you need it by noon and you say, I need this today, if it comes in at 5, whose fault is that? You have to have real clarity about, I need this by this time, I need bullet points, I need a paragraph, I need a report. I think it's the responsibility of both to say, here's what my expectations are, and who's ever going to help do the task, make sure that they provide some feedback about what they thought they heard, so that you have clarity. And then if something doesn't come in, I give very, very direct feedback about what I thought the expectations were, how they fell short, and what we need to do next time to be on task. If that repeats itself over time, then other actions need to be taken. But usually it's communications and providing real clarity that make things work.
By the way, you're listening to Jim Blazar, Chief Strategy Officer, Hackensack Meridian Health. And I should disclose I do coaching and training, and I've worked with physicians in your organization, and you and I have had a lot of conversations about this. I saw Mary Gamba in our studio. By the way, Steve Adubato, this is the Leadership Hour. We are on AM 970. You can check us out on the podcast later and also on the AM 970 website. And by the way, in the second half hour of the Leadership Hour. You can check out State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, a totally different feel where we talk with leaders of all stripes about the issues that matter in the state of New Jersey. Mary, why were you smiling when Jim Blazar was talking about how specific you need to be about what you want, when you need it, and why?
Well, Jim, I was smiling because one of Steve's traits as a very effective leader is sending an email to let us know when, specifically by noon or some other designated time, exactly when something is due or an update or whatever the communication is. And it is such an effective tool to use as a leader because it sets the expectation for the team member. And so this way they know exactly what is expected by when.
But what about when the team... See, sometimes I'll ask Jim, so tell me when you'll have this. And it'll be, I'm going to have it to you sometime this week. And I'll say, that's not a time. And I'm sure it drives people crazy, Jim. But I say, no, you tell me. I won't even set the time for you unless I know when we need it, Jim. But I'll say, set the time. And very often people will not make the commitment. What do you think that's about, Jim?
You know, it could be a lot of things. People have a lot of things on their plate, or they don't know how long they think it's gonna take. But I think that for it to work, we have to leave the meeting or the conversation with clarity. One thing that I have learned is that, you know, based on the topic and how much time you do have, people react to tasks differently. And I've worked with people that are more introverted or extroverted, and some people are very comfortable giving it time. Some people really feel like they need to think about what it will take to get that task done.
Yep.
If I've got the time, I can say, sometimes I'll say, hey, think about that, and tomorrow morning, let me know when you'll have that, and we'll make sure that it works for both of us. You don't always have the luxury of that amount of time, but I do have people that are so detail-oriented that they need that little extra time if you can afford it, but you don't remove the accountability. You say, okay, then by tomorrow or later today, get back to me about what we can do, and then you sign an agreement.
Folks, you're listening to Jim Blazar from Hackensack Meridian Health, who has been a leader of so many complex, interesting, strategic, operational situations, and just a little bit of a merger that he was involved in between two large healthcare organizations. Hey, Jim, listen, I just can't thank you enough. I know I speak for Mary and our whole team at the Leadership Hour. I can't thank you enough with your very busy schedule for taking the time to talk to us and share your insights and expertise. Anything else you want to... By the way, number one leadership lesson you've learned over the years is?
It's about progress, not perfection.
Whoa.
I want to drop the mic. I can't because it's on a stand, but I want to drop this mic right now. That was amazing. Can you say it again?
It's about progress, not perfection.
Mary is just smirking
I'm
at
glowing.
Jim, you've given us a lot to think about, and I really appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Thank you, Jim.
Mary,
Thank you, Mary.
Why were you... It's about progress, not perfection.
I'm writing it down. That to me is...
Leadership is about progress. It is about... Doesn't it have to be perfect?
No, because if you say that it's perfect, then you mean that there's nowhere to go. If you're saying that that means that you've reached the top, that you feel like you've gotten as far as you can go. So I don't think it is, but it is about progressing to that next step. So that was just wonderful.
You know what?
That was a good nugget.
It was a great nugget. You wrote it down, I could tell.
I did.
And what's so interesting about this is that, Jim Blazar is someone who's been out there and in a lot of different kinds of organizations, and I didn't expect that from him. That's what's so great about the Leadership Hour.
And I think it's so great because that one question that when you ask people, I always pause because I can't wait to hear what they're going to say. And some of it's the typical, I learned to be a great leader. You need to learn how to be a great follower or whatever. They come up with all these ideas, but this one to me just really hit home. I liked it.
Yeah, when you talk, listen, I'm a fan of a lot of leadership books, many of which I have here. By the way, I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, John Cotter. One of our favorite books, Mary.
Steve Adubato's Lessons in Leadership.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah,
but
that's a
another
good
one. Here
one.
is Peaks and Valleys by Dr. Spencer Johnson, the ups and downs of life and as a leader dealing with that. Also, Spencer Johnson's other book is called
Who Moved My Cheese? So all of these really about change and dealing with change.
There's something else I want to touch on. The other book you have there that we've talked about before, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff by Dr. Richard Carlson. There's a chapter in that truthfully is related to leadership in a lot of ways, and it's this. He called it the theory of separate realities.
Yes.
And you may say, well, what are you talking about? And as I want to interpret it, and by the way, we lost Richard Carlson, Dr. Carlson, way too young, but his books live on, his legacy lives on. And if you ever check out this book and the chapter, it's the theory of separate realities. Here's what it says. Because, as leaders or as people, we often want people to see the world the way we see it, to agree with us, to just say, you're right, Steve, or whomever. And what Carlson says is it's a lot harder than we think, because what we see as right, I'm a leader, I know what's right. The problem is the theory of separate realities is that each one of us has lived a separate life with separate experiences, a different set of parents, maybe one parent, maybe orphaned, went to a certain kind of school or didn't go to school, had a certain education, a certain degree, or not. We're in a certain community, wealth, lack of wealth, working class, parent lost a job, whatever. And he argues that who we are and how we see the world, this is Carlson speaking about the theory of separate realities, is totally predicated on our experiences and the idea that we would think and expect that other people see the world the way we do. By the way, this isn't just for leaders. It's for husbands and wives.
Yeah.
Am I making too much of this?
Not at all. And I know, especially, I remember I used to use the expression, I think, a lot. And that was one of the things I learned about being a really effective leader is when you do know. And I know from reading and learning, especially about Richard Carlson and his ideas, that when it comes to the theory of separate realities, we all have a different journey in life. We all have different perspective and we come at things in a different way. And the best leaders can empathize. You may not always understand because you haven't walked in their shoes, but you can empathize and you could try to
Describe
understand.
what that means. Empathize. Doctor once said when our son, Steve, was being born, I remember a doctor coming in, my wife was in labor for so many hours, 20 plus hours, and he walked in, male doctor, and he said, "Oh, Mrs. Adubato, I know exactly how you feel." Did he?
No, there is no way any man, anywhere, any place could know what a woman is feeling. I have given birth to 2 very large children, and I love them very much.
Brian, you'd expect that. That's not. You'd expect that as part of the lead. By the way, this is the Leadership Hour. This is Steve Adubato. That's Mary Gamba, and she's talking about a very large
Will
children.
and Joey, love you so much. But you can try to understand. You could try to really think about what it would feel like and empathize.
That's leadership?
It is leadership, because taking it back to work, if you have an issue with one of your employees, maybe they're dealing with a death in the family. Maybe it's not even that bad. Maybe their dog is sick and they had a rough night because they were up with a sick dog. But to them, that was important. To them, that's a big deal. So you can't minimize someone else's reality just because you don't perceive it as being important.
Okay, let's stay on this because you opened up another area. I often argue, I don't mean argue, but make the case that...
But you do often argue, but that's okay too.
Giving you a microphone and a platform, which I did not have to do, I chose to do, is dangerous.
Yes, it is.
And so far...
But I'll let you continue.
Hold on. It's called the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour, and next week it'll be called the Mary Gamba I Let Steve Adubato on My Show Hour.
I like that. It has a nice ring to it.
No, it doesn't. Listen, so I often say that excellence is not negotiable. So here's the thing. So we listened to Jim Blazar say it's about, say it again?
Progress, not perfection.
Okay, so take perfection out of it. But excellence to me is not perfection.
Agreed.
So I got this thing about excellence, at least as I define it. And I'm not great. I think I empathize. This isn't about me, by the way. It's for any listener or anyone who's a leader thinking about this. I believe I care deeply about our people. I want to know. We have a lot of women who work for us, many of whom have children, families, challenging on many levels. But I try to figure out the difference between, and you know where I'm going, hey, this is my situation, it's been really tough, and a series of what I call excuses to not get the job done as it's expected to. And I'm not great with what I think are excuses.
And I agree with you completely. there is a huge difference between excuses and having a different reason and talking your way out of any situation.
You tell a team member, listen, you have a certain job, you need to be accessible. I may have to call you by phone, and if I email you a certain amount of time, you get back to me. 2 days later, you hear nothing. And that person's in a key leadership position, and you turn around and you go, what happened? And the person says, yeah, we had a family party. Like, I'm not good with that.
Right. But it goes down to, and we've talked about this all the time, it goes down to accountability and expectations. And if you set the expectation by a certain time, you
meaning the leader?
The leader. Any leader needs to set expectations for their organization, whether that means, all right, at 5 o'clock, you don't need to check your email, or if that means 24/7, you need to be accessible. Depends on the type of organization.
Go ahead.
We were talking with Jim Blazar. He's with a large healthcare system. So Stuff happens. And, in our industry, thankfully, we're not saving lives because I would not be able to handle the pressure of that. However, that does not lessen.
Excuse me, Mary. We have clients at Stand and Deliver always have issues. They want to reach out.
Of course.
We coach and consult with CEOs. Stuff happens. Brian's in the studio right now. Brian, I know people can't hear you. How often on the television side, stuff happens on a weekend?
It does.
You've gotten emails from me on the weekend, and hopefully they're not nasty in tone, but they are like, hey, I just saw such and such. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. What's going on? I'll reach out for our team, staff members, and I'm sitting there obsessing over it. And so it's a long-winded way of saying, what happens if the leader is pretty obsessive and lives this stuff 24/7, but he or she expects everyone else to be doing that?
Well, I think that is a matter of setting expectations. And I think that
Not realistic, is it?
it depends on what those expectations are. If the expectation is a leader communicating to his staff, acknowledge that you received this email and let me know when you will correct it.
Right. Not stop your life right now. I want to be clear.
Exactly. So I think any leader, any organization needs to set the ground rules. And even, again, we're crossing over because I'm sure a lot of people that are listening on IM 970 are also driving maybe with their family. You set expectations with your children of what time they need to be home at the end of the night or when they're going to get their homework done before they can go and do another activity. So if you set those expectations
and agree, the kid has to agree.
They do need
to agree. The staff person has to agree.
Yes.
And how about if they agree?
Yeah, but that goes back to the excellence. Everyone needs to understand what that bar is. And it's not the same with every organization. It's not. Some organizations have a lower bar.
A couple other topics. We've got about 9.5 minutes left. Again, I'm loving doing this. I should tell folks, if you're listening to Steve Adubato's Leadership Hour on AM 970 or on the podcast or listening on the AM 970 website or wherever else, this is something I've been wanting to do ever since we wrote the book, Lessons in Leadership. I kept thinking, you know what? There are things I want to share with other people. I'd like to teach. I'd like to coach. I would like to help folks. And I also, if you want to communicate with us and give us leadership questions, issues, challenges you want to deal with, Mary, how can people get me on Twitter?
On Twitter, Steve Adubato, and then on Facebook, Steve Adubato, PhD. And speaking of giving away stuff for free, on our website, stand-deliver.com, we also have a great archive of articles, thousands and thousands of articles that are up there for free. You can learn tips, tools about engaging, asking great questions, attitude, everything related to being an effective leader.
All right, try this one. By the way, it's Adubato, Adubato. Sometimes people mispronounce it.
That is true.
Gambit is easy. How about this one? Change. That book over there, the Dr. Spencer Johnson book, Who Moved My Cheese. If you have never read Who Moved My Cheese, it's fascinating.
It is a great book.
So here's the story, Who Moved My Cheese, the short version. I shouldn't be plugging other people's books.
I just noticed, though, you have the large print edition. So is there something you
want
to...
Mary, I'm older,
sorry.
But I'm not that old that I need the... No, that you know what? It's not... That's just big print.
Oh, they make it in big print.
Yes. It's a short book, but here's the story of the book. There are 4 mice, and they're in a maze. And I forget their names. One of them's named Scruff. I know that. But it's crazy because... the cheese, Who Moved My Cheese? The cheese is in the same spot every day. And the 4 mice go to that cheese every day, get the cheese, eat the cheese, fight over the cheese. 2 of the mice ask themselves, hey, wait a minute. What happens if somebody moves the cheese? By the way, the cheese is a metaphor for anything you want in life. You're in broadcasting, you're in media, you're in business, you're in education, whatever you do, you're in healthcare, the cheese keeps moving, the goal.
Yes.
Two of the mice are constantly asking, what happens if the cheese moves? How are we going to be prepared to figure out where the cheese is? And they tell the other two mice, let's get together and figure out how to anticipate the change of where the cheese is going to be, and let's get ready. And the other two mice are fat and happy. I'm sorry for using that word. Happy. No, fat. They shouldn't use that word. They're like, no, that cheese isn't going to move. It's in the same place every day, like Blockbusters.
It's too soon.
I shouldn't have said that.
No, too soon. Too soon.
I don't think it is. How about Kodak?
Okay, Kodak.
How about BlackBerry?
Yes.
We could keep doing this.
You can do that all day long.
The cheese isn't going to move. It's right, Brian. It's where it's going to be every day, right? No one's going to take a picture off an iPhone. It's ridiculous. Cameras. I'm sitting there going, the cheese moved. The two mice that were anticipating where the cheese could be had 8 different ideas. They finally found it. They didn't want to tell the other two mice, who kept saying, the industry's not going to change. The cheese isn't going to change. It's not going to move. And they got hungry. What do you take from that?
Well, I think you need to really, and you did a great job summarizing the book, by the way. It's
what happens when you read the big print? Go ahead.
The big print definitely helps it to sink into your core. And
why is change so hard for so many?
I think it's hard for many reasons. I think that for most leaders, when the going gets good and you get comfortable.
Peaks and valleys, his other book. Dr. Johnson's other book.
Maybe that's why subliminally it just came to me.
You're at a peak. Everything's good.
Everything's great.
Let's stay at the way it is, okay?
Yes,
Let's keep
and
it the
that's
way
where
it
the
is.
status quo becomes an issue. We talk about the status quo a lot.
Not an option.
It's not an option, and the cheese will move, and things are going to happen. Things are going to change.
Your industry will change?
Every industry. I argue there's not a single industry that has not changed over decades.
You mean like newspapers who said, come on, everybody's going to want a newspaper.
Exactly. My kids still can't believe that I was alive when there wasn't internet, there was no cell phone, there was no, it was black and white television at best.
Yes.
And they have no idea that this time even existed, and let alone that I was alive to witness it happening.
Right.
And so things are going to change, and hopefully for the better.
So what is it that great leaders do as it relates to change? Do they accept it when it happens? Or do they just go out and embrace? They make the change.
I was just going to say that. They either adapt to the change or they make the change. They lead the change. Because sometimes change is going to be out of our control. Sometimes things are going to go awry. Someone, Blockbuster, you had brought that up. Someone is going to come out with a new and innovative way to view movies.
You mean like in your house by
you don't actually have
pressing
to go,
a button?
Yeah, you don't have to go and get a VHS tape.
Or wait online till like somebody else brings it back?
Yes, exactly.
And get charged like $5 every day for you didn't bring it back?
Yeah, and we talk about innovation. When things change, we could adapt or die. And I think that really the best leaders will adapt, or the even really, really, really great leaders will be the ones that lead the change.
So Steve Jobs was a great leader. By the way, a lot of folks talk about Steve Jobs. He was difficult. He was tough. He was sometimes nasty to people. But as a leader, one of his attributes was he saw things other people didn't see.
Exactly. And I think we've talked a lot about is being a leader, are you born a leader? Or can you become one? I think that extreme, when you're talking someone like him, is truly you're born to see the world a different way. That's brilliant.
His brain is wired.
I think it is.
So the Apple stuff would not have happened if Steve Jobs' brain wasn't wired as a leader a certain way.
I believe that. And even in other industries, if you're not an innovator and if you don't believe in the possibilities, you're not. I think you are hardwired to that. You are hardwired to be an entrepreneur. You're hardwired to say, I want more.
Are you talking about me or talking about one?
Well, you too. I'm talking about just leaders in general who go out there and lead. But yes,
they make it happen.
They make it happen. The fact that we're sitting here doing Steve Adubato's Leadership Hour on AM 970, sure. Jerry Crowley, thank you again for making
the general manager at AM 970.
The general manager,
thank you very
yes,
much.
Thank you for this opportunity. But just believing that something like this could happen and then making it happen. Not everybody has.
But you don't do it by yourself. This is the thing. I agree with what you're saying, and I do sit up at night sometimes thinking like, hey, what's next? What do we do? And by the way, we're in the other business we're in is the not-for-profit television production company, and we often talk about there's donor fatigue. Like we raise money through underwriters to make our stuff happen every day. Without that money, no mission, right? The reality is, how many times I started about 2 years ago saying, hey, Mary, hospitals are merging, banks are merging, some insurance companies don't even exist anymore. We're going to have a hard time doing what we were doing at the same level. We have to change our economic model, change our production model, change our fundraising model. Listen, I wasn't that I was brilliant. It was that I saw that things were changing.
But a lot of people see it and a lot of people don't do anything about it. A lot of people either just say,
stick your head under the covers and say,
this is as good as
I hope
it
it
gets.
works?
Yeah, exactly. This is as good as it gets. It's not going to get any better. I've done all I can do, and I'm just going to ride the wave off into retirement.
Wishful thinking, a good strategy?
Never a good strategy.
So someone says, oh, I've got a minute left. I hate that I love this show so much. Steve Adubato here, this Leadership Hour. I'm here with Mary Gamba. I want to thank Brian, by the way, your whole team, Brian Brodeur and his whole team who are making this happen.
All of our clients who have made this happen as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of great clients. But you know what, Mary? Here's the thing. Got a minute left. I keep thinking people who think they do it by themselves as leaders, that's a joke.
It is. You need to have, just as good as you are as a leader, you need to have that team behind you every step of the way. They need to believe in what you're doing. They need to buy into what you're doing. And you need to make sure as a leader that you are giving them the tools that they need to get the job done.
And so in that spirit, I just want to say to you, Mary, this is the 5th show we've done. And this was an idea. This was something I've been wanting to do for a long time. But I would say this. If I were sitting here alone, just talking, doing a monologue about leadership, versus having you here and doing what we do in private and now doing it in public, it would not nearly be as much fun, it wouldn't be as good, as impactful, as dynamic, as conversational. So I just want to say thank you to you for this, but also, frankly, for being the leader you are every day and running our operation and, frankly, making me look way better than I actually am. So on that note, I'm doing that instead of giving you the raise that you're looking for, just trying to cover all bases.
Thank you for the opportunity, Steve.
This has been the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour with Mary Gamba. And I want to thank all of our guests. Again, to our folks, all of our listeners on AM 970, to the family there, thank you so much. The Salem media family, you guys are terrific. Also, check us out on our website.
Stand-deliver.com.
Twitter
is Steve Adubato.
At Steve Adubato.
At Steve Adubato. And Facebook is Steve Adubato, PhD.
Yes, I actually got my PhD from the great Rutgers University. So listen, thank you for listening, folks. Check out State of Affairs with Steve Adubato coming up right after this.
This is Mary Gamba. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, where we look at the most pressing issues facing the state of New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Marbach. At Georgian Court University, we're committed to educating the public about the importance of higher education and its impact on our communities. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., New Jersey Resources, Summit Medical Group, a physician-owned multi-specialty medical practice serving northern and central New Jersey in 70 locations, the New Jersey Education Association, Georgian Court University, New Jersey Council of County Colleges, and by the Fidelco Group. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. And by Meadowlands Regional Chamber, building essential connections that drive business growth.
Well, welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. We're honored to have once again Kevin O'Toole, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, former New Jersey State Senator, served in the legislature for how many years?
22.
22. Let's do this. We'll do some Port Authority stuff, talk about some political discourse. You are a contributing columnist for Insider NJ. Check it out, folks. Great political stuff. You have written extensively on the political discourse, how nasty, how personal, how negative it is, and it's not productive to getting things done. You were part of the darn thing senator, my good friend Kevin, for 22 years. Did it change during that time? Is it just that now? And what's it about?
Well, I'm in a different role now, and maybe I'm a better coach than a player. No, I mean, part of what I was there for the 22 years, part of it's theater, part of it's you have this firm belief, part of it's just a real honest disagreement. And did I elevate my voice on occasion? I've been known to do that. So here's what, if you ask me, if you want to go back in time when Florio did the tax increase,
Jim Florio, former governor, 1993,
and the hands across New Jersey got very angry. They were burning tissues and whatnot. At some point, Chuck Italian becomes a speaker. I think
of the House.
Then you start seeing a divide. Then because the vitriol becomes really inflamed, and you saw a real partisan divide. And then nationally, you saw when Newt took over as the speaker,
Newt Gingrich.
94, 95, you saw a national divide. When Governor McGreevey came in 2002, January, he kind of fueled that fire. Now, Jim McGreevey's doing God's work now. We love what he's doing with
New Jersey Reentry Corporation, recidivism, second chances
doing
for ex-offenders.
great stuff, but he wouldn't look at a Republican if they were on fire back in 2002. He just had his Democrats, he had his majority, and he ramrodded stuff through
What about today, Kevin?
the legislature. I think, well, listen, it's a different dynamic now. So when you saw what the Democrats did, they were jacked up against Governor Christie, and everything was a no, no, no. I think they're going to give Governor Murphy a little more time and breathing room, although you read about some discourse.
You really do think the Democrats are going to be as cooperative? We have actually in this studio today, New Jersey State Senate President Steve Sweeney will be in. He'll share his views on the millionaire's tax, whether he thinks there's another way to go on the pension situation. Is it easier when the Democrats control the Assembly, the Senate, and the governorship to, quote, get things done on behalf of the people?
Well, I mean, look, we've read all of the comments between Murphy and Sweeney and the Speaker and Murphy, and they seem to be getting along from a distance. I assume as they get together for the budget, they're going to have to rally around and have some agreement, and I think that's going to happen. Look, and the reality is that the legislature is large and in charge. They are a co-equal form of government. Now more than ever, they're going to assert themselves and be heard. I think Governor Murphy's been doing a great job handling the legislature and working with them in a very calm, rational, reasonable voice.
Switch gears. Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. One of the big issues that has come up a lot. We actually had former Senator Bob Gordon, who's now going to be on the Board of Public Utilities. Lots of movement around. One of the things he talked about, and Senator Loretta Weinberg, you know well, kept talking about transparency at the Port Authority, oversight, so that people knew more about how you did what you do and make the decisions you make every day. How has that changed in the last couple of years?
First of all, I think Loretta Weinberg and Gordon and Senator Gordon are responsible for a lot of that transparency. Chairman Degnan responsible for really taking the shroud off what occurred at the Port Authority. And now with the new leadership and some folks like Rick Cotton, the executive director, who is sensational. He's an excellent partner. He's the best public servant I've ever worked with in my life, bar none. I think the two of us working together are bringing really good things in a very transparent way in New York and New Jersey.
Senator, let's be specific. Some of the most important projects, and do we lead with the Gateway Tunnel? Is the Gateway Tunnel, whether it gets done or not, as we do this program mid-April 2018, we don't know where the president is on this, where Washington is. It has to be a balance between federal and state money. That tunnel going into New York City, back and forth, right? First, you believe it'll happen. Second of all, what does that have to do with the Port Authority?
Yes, and the Port Authority is a critical piece of funding. New York, New Jersey, the feds.
You also regulate the Lincoln Tunnel.
We do, and the Holland, and the number of bridges.
George Washington Bridge, the airports, et cetera.
You name them.
Path.
6 airports, but it's critical, and I think we're slowly getting there. I think that, we have not engaged, the Port Authority has deliberately not engaged with the public discourse, allowing the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives deal with the White House on that, and they're moving it along. I think we're going to get there.
I'm curious about something when it comes to transportation. We're actually in a discussion with the folks at the Port Authority about possibly doing a series that increases public awareness about transportation issues, trans-states, New York and New Jersey. And we've talked to you about this. Do we know as citizens enough about how people and goods and services get back and forth between New York and New Jersey? And is that our business as citizens or your business as policymakers?
The answer is we don't. I didn't have a clue. I've been in this state for 53 years, been involved in government for 30 years, until I got to the Port Authority in July. I didn't have a clue as to how we move our commerce, whether it's the docks, whether it's the trains, whether it's the shipping, whether it is through the airlines. It is a massive industry that is kind of under the radar. The trucking industry, the transportation needs that we have, the infrastructure has to be in place to service just this tri-state area in terms of the goods and services we consume.
What happens when a bridge is crumbling underneath, or it's in disrepair, if you will, or the trains aren't working? What happens to commerce and people moving back and forth?
It's a major letdown. The fact is we have not invested enough in our infrastructure until we did the Transportation Trust Fund replenishment last year, which it was a bipartisan deal. Until we did that, we had no way to say we're going to fund bridges and roads going forward for the next 5 or 7 years. Bipartisan, we got together, Senate President Sweeney and the governor got together, and we put that money, where it counts, and making sure.
You meant Governor Christie.
I did mean.
I just want to clarify that you meant Governor Christie.
I did. So the reality is, if we don't invest in the infrastructure now, you're going to have problems like we saw in Miami, we saw in Minneapolis, where bridges and roadways are crumbling and
does it have
die.
to? Sorry for interrupting, Kevin. Does it have to come down to that?
I think
horrible event.
I think, unfortunately, it doesn't have to, but I think it shakes the consciousness of America. It shakes us awake to saying, what do we have to do? It's no longer just, you can't be against bonding or putting up significant dollars. The most ardent Republican has to understand the consequences if we don't put real money into roads and bridges and tunnels.
That's not a partisan issue.
It has developed to partisan.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And you saw Senators Orho and a number of others who came to the forefront, who took a beating, who suffered a primary and a general election beating after they voted for that Transportation Trust Fund replenishment. And they all won, by the way. Every person who voted for the Transportation Trust Fund and that gas tax as a Republican, they won their seats.
20 seconds before we let you out of here. You left the Senate when?
July.
How much are you enjoying your life since then?
I love my life. This Port Authority gig is the greatest public service I've ever been able to participate in my life. On top of that, I get to see my kids, my daughter, who's a freshman in college, soon to be a sophomore. My son's about to be a senior in college. And my wife and I get to travel and do some really cool stuff.
And you have a law firm, in fact, to fully disclose, one of the underwriters of State of Affairs for some of our public policy programming. And the name of the firm is?
Toole Scrivo.
Just want to make sure. And Tom Scrivo is your colleague. He's had some experience in government.
A little bit. So Tom and I met in law school first day. He served as a governor's counsel the last year and a half. Most amazing lawyer in person I've ever met. Senator,
I want to thank you for joining us, as always. This is, in fact, State of Affairs. We are coming to you from the NJTV studio in Newark, New Jersey, and we will be right back.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to welcome Ira Robbins, President and Chief Executive Officer, Valley National Bank. Good to see you, Ira.
Good to see you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
I've been honored for the last few years to do some leadership and communication coaching at the bank. I've gotten to know it well. But when I met you, you were not the president and CEO.
No.
You've been there how long?
22 years this July. I started as a management trainee, got a job out of a newspaper to work for Valley.
Describe the job of president and CEO at this bank. And the footprint of the bank is?
So we have branches in New Jersey, New York, Florida, and now recently in the state of Alabama. New Jersey is our home, though. That's where the bank started in 1927, so the bank's been around for about 91 years. I think the role as CEO, president, is more just of a leader. From a directional perspective, how do you set the tone within the organization, set the strategy within the organization? For my prior 21 years within the organization, it's really been pulling up my sleeves.
Operations.
And attempting to really...
Finance.
Exactly.
So is it a big... I'm curious, as a student of leadership, I'm always curious about how people make the adjustment. You're dealing with finance, you're dealing with operations, like in the weeds, and then you have to step back and be a big picture leader?
It's a big change, for me at least. I've always been, as you said, in the ground, in the focus, as much as I could be to make sure that what we were looking at made some financial sense as to the path we were going down. Now it's more taking that, having a step back, and hopefully having people come up with those ideas on their own, but once again, attempting to provide that financial acumen to make sure there's a path that makes sense for us.
Our State of Affairs focuses on public policy. I saw you with Jim Cramer, our good friend over at CNBC, and he was pressing you on a whole range of tax-related questions. A, the federal tax laws led by President Trump impact not just on the banking industry, but on consumers overall, different in New Jersey than in Florida and Texas? Go ahead.
Absolutely. You look at the state of New Jersey. So we've grown about 800,000 actual employees in the last 3 to 4 years. State of Florida, 4 million people have moved to the state of Florida. I think when New Jersey looks at its economics, it needs to make sure we just don't look from an isolated view, but we need to really, from a macro perspective, understand what are the other opportunities from a consumer perspective as well as a business perspective. Why does a consumer want to live in New Jersey versus the state of Florida? Why does a business want to set up shop in the state of New Jersey? And not only set up shop, but stay in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, so lay that out for a little bit. Just on the business end, what are you looking for?
Taxes. You have a 5.5% tax rate versus a 9-10% tax rate in the state of New Jersey.
Corporate tax.
Corporate tax rate. From an individual perspective, 0% income state tax rate in the state of Florida versus potentially 10% in the state of New Jersey. New Jersey is a wonderful state. And there's many, many wonderful attributes associated with it. Being so close to New York City, the culture, the quality of employees that we have here are second to none. That said, when you're looking at it from a business perspective, it definitely comes down to the bottom line. And if you're not going to be able to generate enough net income for yourself, for your shareholders, you have to make a decision as to what state makes the most sense. And when economic policy gets decided in the state of New Jersey, it can't be just an isolated view. We have to make sure we look at it across all different spectrums.
Ira, what do you think most consumers, I mean, you've said in some of the conversations we've had offline that it's regulation, a challenge, but the bigger one is technology. What do you mean by that?
It's such an opportunity for banks today. And I think, when you traditionally look at a bank, banks are very straightforward. We take in deposits and make loans. But it's how we do that today that's really changing, and that provides the opportunity to really differentiate ourselves as a bank, whether it be Valley National Bank or any other organization today. And I think that also attracts talent today when you can come into an organization and say, I have the ability to mold something, to create something that's a little bit different as to how we connect with our customers. That unique user experience is what everyone's trying to really gravitate towards. How do you develop that? How do you target a specific customer segment and say, I'm going to deliver the very traditional product in a different manner that's unique to that customer, but at an expense that's very, very manufacturing.
But you also have to have the technology that people want to make things faster, but keep the personal touch. Very difficult.
So it is, but it isn't. I think if you look at it from a long-term perspective, take AI as to how you go about banking. So I have a customer call me and say, I have a delinquent on my residential mortgage. So you can either have an individual answer the phone, or you can have artificial intelligence that sits there and picks up the phone and says, I know that this is Ira Robbins based on the phone number. I know that Ira Robbins was delinquent. Ira Robbins has never been delinquent before. Why don't I just go ahead and waive that charge for him? Where compared to, it's Ira Robbins calling, I've been delinquent for the last 12 times, maybe that individual needs a little bit more counseling, right? So you can direct from an expense perspective, a customized approach that I believe is unique to that individual customer. And that's where every bank needs to be. And not just bank, but I think from a customer perspective, everyone wants that unique touch and feel that connects with him or her.
I would go back because in the Kramer interview on CNBC, you did talk about Trump a little bit.
Yeah.
Listen, we're doing this program in mid-April. We don't know what tweets coming out. We don't know what trade policy is going on. But I don't want to get into the complexities of a trade war potentially with China. The level of volatility, let's say, or unpredictability in Washington, the White House, to what degree does it impact the banking industry, if at all?
So look, we've been in a very benign economy, and the markets have been very low volatility in them, as you earlier described. Having a little bit of volatility is not bad. I think people have become very complacent.
Respectfully, Ira, for people with pensions that are waiting to retire, that ain't great.
I think from a risk perspective, understanding that
risk.
Risk is basically whether I'm risk averse as to what type of exposure I want to take within the market versus what my comfort level is. If you see a market that linear looks like this for a long period of time, someone necessarily isn't that attuned as to what their real risk profile is. Having a little bit of volatility every now and then eliminates some of that commonplace that people have begun to feel, and I think that's a good
complacency. I remember when President Trump took office, it's going up and up. I'm thinking, hey, listen, those are my retirement funds. That's great. It's great. But there's a downside.
Yeah, it doesn't always go that way, right? And I think when you're looking at your investment profile, if your expectation is it's always going to go this way, you're going to have an allocation that maybe isn't the most appropriate for you today. So having a little bump here and there is part of the economy, is part of the economic cycle. We need that.
Real quick, branding question before we get back to regulation, before I let you go. As we speak, there's a discussion going on about tweaking, if you will, of the name of Valley? Because your chyron says Valley National Bank.
Yeah, and I think how does that resonate to a specific customer? And I think when we look at Valley National Bank, there's a current customer that we serve today, and maybe there's a target customer that looks a little bit different. And the millennials make up a much larger component of the workforce today than ever. We need to be able to target them. Does Valley National Bank resonate with that target segment today like it does with our current customer segment? And I think as we look to brand the bank as we move forward, we need to make sure we are resonating with both target segments, and then we have a product set and experience that resonates with both target segments as well.
So there might be a tweak in the name.
I believe so.
Okay, final question before you let you go. Banking industry over the next, I'm not going to say 3 to 5 years, the next couple of years, what do you predict in terms of interest rates?
Yeah, it's a good question. My own individual opinion, not the bank's opinion, would be that we're not going that high on the long end. I would say there's concerns that I have with regard to the global economy, with regard to where as an organization, where as an economy we're going to go. I would say the 10-year, in my opinion, doesn't get much over 3%.
That's it?
That's it. My own individual opinion. I think, from a bank's perspective, risk management, we talked about volatility before, it's our responsibility, and it should be everyone's responsibility to make sure that we've set up a balance sheet that lets interest rates go to 5% and let interest rates go down to a 2%, just like somebody should do with their own individual investments. Ira
Robbins is President and Chief Executive Officer of, as we speak, Valley National Bank. Pay attention to the potential name change over time. Thank you, Ira.
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
This is State of Affairs. We're at NJTV Studios in Newark, and we will be right back.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're honored to welcome Jose Linares, Chief Judge of the New Jersey Federal District Court. Good to see you, Judge.
Good to see you, Steve.
Describe what the New Jersey Federal District Court is.
Well, the Federal District Court is the federal branch of the judiciary in New Jersey. Of course, most people are familiar with the state court system, from the municipal court level to the tenancy courts to the family court to the state courts. The federal judiciary, it's different. New Jersey is the oldest united district court in the country, meaning that it's only one district. And we service cases that deal with federal litigation, patent litigation, immigration cases, Social Security appeals. So it's a court of special jurisdiction in that in order to get into our court, you have to have a special type of jurisdiction, whether it's a federal question that's at issue, a constitutional issue, something like that. And the judges in the federal system are appointed by the president and with the advice and consent of the Senate. So in that sense, it's also different.
Judge, you told me recently off camera that we have a crisis. What's the crisis?
We do. We have a judicial crisis in New Jersey. I say that because our court is an extremely busy court. We are a 17-judge court, active judge court. The federal judiciary, who tracks numbers and filings and so forth, has determined we really should be at a 20-judge court. And we're trying to get Congress to increase the number of judges in New Jersey to 20. But as of right now, we have, in essence, 5 vacancies out of 17, and we're going to be up to 6 come next year, or at least potentially 6 if one of the judges that becomes senior eligible next year chooses to go senior status. So
how does that impact our lives in New Jersey?
It impacts your lives a lot. When you think about it, New Jersey, and just to put it in perspective, from 2016 to 2017, we had a 47% increase in case filings. We're top among the Third Circuit. Second, we're top in the Third Circuit, 4th in the nation, the number of filings. 7th in weighted cases, which means complicated cases. And we handle a ton of pharmaceutical patent work and criminal cases. So how does it affect the citizens of New Jersey? Okay, we have an opioid crisis in New Jersey right now. Tons of problems arising out of that with criminal cases, reentry programs, and these are cases that come to the court.
What happens if there's no judge to handle them?
It becomes a huge problem. Now, under federal statutes. There is a Speedy Trial Act, which means that the criminal case has got to go first, okay, which has a trickle-down effect on the other cases. You got to understand, too, and I mentioned the pharmaceutical because we're very heavily involved in patent litigation in New Jersey. 14 out of the 20th largest pharmaceutical
right here
places are in New Jersey. And as a result, we have a lot of that litigation.
So holding up patents.
So, well, some of that patent litigation between generics and branded drug manufacturers have to come to conclusion within 30 months. So now you have the opioid problems, the gangs, the criminal cases. That goes first. Then you have this other 30-month cases that have to be tried. Delaware and New Jersey combined for 90% of that type of litigation. 90% in the entire country. We're second in the country with the most vacancies right now.
Why?
Well, this is a more complicated problem.
Give me the short version.
The short version is that the White House and our senators haven't gotten together and come up with replacements for the judges that are presently vacant.
So the President Trump, the White House, and the two Democratic senators in New Jersey, Booker and Menendez, have to agree.
They have to agree. Now, I have talked to the White House counsel. I've sat down with him. He was kind enough to give me a lot of time, and as did Senator Menendez and Senator Booker, all of which assure me they're working on it. But right now, we're second, maybe first now in the country with the oldest vacancies. Some of these vacancies are 3 years old, and they haven't
There's nobody
been resolved.
there?
Listen, as of right now, we don't have anybody that's been confirmed, nominated and confirmed for U.S. Marshal in New Jersey, federal district court judges, U.S. Attorney, and there's a Third Circuit, although I saw something in the news there may be a Third Circuit appointment coming up. But that's where we are. And when you say how does it affect the people, look, we handle, for example, Social Security cases.
Right.
Social Security cases are appeals from people that have who claim to be totally disabled, potentially in financial straits, and that need a resolution to their case.
No judge, what happens?
The case waits and waits, and these people need help, and they have a right to have their case heard in a timely fashion. So we need more judges. And when I say we're in a judicial crisis, it's not really about the judges. The judges are going to work with whatever cases they have. It's about the people in New Jersey.
Is there anything people in New Jersey can do?
Yeah, I think they can. It is a political system in that the people in the political world have to come together and agree on an appropriate package that's agreeable to both sides, whatever that may be, to get this vacancies full. And it is a slow process. There's got to be a nomination, then there's got to be a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, and then a full Senate vote. So even if they were to act on it in the next month or two, we're still looking at a year with this court working at 37% down, potentially almost 50%, because if you think of the court as one that really should be functioning at 20 judges, because as has been determined, because of the numbers of filings that we have over 16,000 filings last year, over 16,000. Now, if you look at that number,
well, we're actually going to continue the conversation on our online version, but finish your statement.
My statement simply was going to be that if you look at the number of cases and the number of judges that has been acknowledged we're required to have, we're almost at a 50% level, which affects not the amount of work the judges are doing. It's the same amount of work. It's the citizens' cases being litigated, the corporate cases being litigated, the people that need their cases heard not being heard.
With the Chief Judge of the New Jersey Federal District Court, Jose Linares, we'll continue the conversation online. Check out our online version. But thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Check you out next week.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., New Jersey Resources, Summit Medical Group, the New Jersey Education Association, Georgian Court University, New Jersey Council of County Colleges, and by the Fidelco Group.
Hi, I'm Eric. You might see me as an ordinary person, but I've been living with a brain injury for nearly 2 years. One of my struggles is short-term memory loss. At Opportunity Project, I'm given hope and support and have gained my confidence back through the job placement program. Despite my challenges, I have a reason to keep improving. Today, even though life has changed me, I believe that anything is possible.
If you have a brain injury, you don't have to face your road to recovery alone.